Somebody's Tractor Adventure.
Well, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go ahead and finish up our service, our 50-hour service on the LS MT125. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for watching, and please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. Today we're going to finish up our service on our LS MT125, and you know, this is the second day on this. I worked on it about 4 hours yesterday, and you know, understand this service will not take you as long. It takes quite a bit of time doing the videos and editing, and you know, and moving the camera around and getting the different shots. So I would say give yourself a good you know, a good afternoon or you know, a good Saturday morning, depending on your skill level. And you know, you should be able to have this thing serviced and back out mowing in probably 5 to 6 hours. You know, in worst case scenario, give yourself a day. You know, give yourself a good Saturday to do it in. Now the manual says we're up to number 15 on the list now, front axle oil. It says to check it at 50 hours, and then it says at 500 hours to replace it. Well, then, you know, that's not going to work for me. I'm a maintenance fanatic. I've told you guys that. So I'm going to go ahead and change mine out today, and I'm putting in synthetic gear oil from Lucas. Again, I really like Lucas products. Everything I read in the specs, they're a really good quality product. So it'll make me feel better for long term. I plan on keeping this tractor a long time, and it'll make me feel better to know that I've got a synthetic gear oil in my front axle. All right, let's look over the axle real quick. This is the right side of the axle as if you were sitting on the tractor. At the bottom of the wheeled gear hub, there's a drain plug here, and then there is behind the steering cylinder arm, there's a drain plug right here. I don't know if you can see that. There's a drain plug right there. And then I'll show you the other side. The side is the same way. There is the drain plug on the left side of the geared hub, and then on the top of this axle is your fuel plug. And somebody might have got a little carried away when they tightened that down. There you go. Now obviously the oil's not going to show correctly here because the front axle is leaning to one side. So anyway, there we go. Alright, looking at the manual here, and it's talking about the front axle. It's going to be 2 quarts for the front axle, and it shows an SAE 80W90 weight or API GL4, and let's see here, which is an 80W90. It's really hard to find an 80W90 anymore, so I'm going with the SAE 75W 90 weight. Now, don't get worried too much about the first number. The first number is really not that important. It's the last number. As long as the last number matches up, this means that operating temperature, it has the viscosity of a 90 weight oil. And the first number is just that the fact that it starts out at a 75 weight. Now you gotta understand, when the oil reaches full operating temperature, a 90 weight, a true 90 weight oil will not have the viscosity of a cold 90 weight oil. It'll have the viscosity of, say, maybe even a 60 weight oil, something like that. It really thins out quite a bit as it gets warm. So don't let the first number worry you too much. It's the last number that's really important. And this oil will meet all the requirements for these front axles. All right, we're going to go ahead and start by make sure that you, on the other side, you go ahead and take out the oil fill plug so it doesn't create a vacuum, and it lets it drain a little easier. Now, I want you to know that was, to me, that was very loose. I had to put hardly any pressure on that at all. Alright, now this oil is draining out. I'm going to see if I can finagle this around, possibly get both of these drain plugs at the same time, or I might just make a big old giant mess. So I'm doing the front one behind the steering cylinder. I'm doing that front drain plug. And it's tight. There's not a whole lot of room between it. Yeah, I'm going to have to wait. I don't have enough grip pan here. So I'll wait and let that drain out through this way. Drain out through the bottom. Take a little time. Not too big of a mess. Kind of got to understand when you're going to do a service on a tractor, you're going to make some mess. Alright, we're going to take this one off. I'm going to try to show you guys. Hopefully this one will be a little tighter than the other one was. I guess I get the wrench on it right there. You go. That's how it was. It was just about finger tight. So you guys need to check that out on your front axles of your LS MT125s. I don't think they would have come out. They were, I guess, tight enough, but they weren't tight enough for me. I don't think. You're running down the road mowing, and one of those things vibrate loose. You could go for days without realizing that that you had no oil in your front axle. All right, when you take the wheels off your tractor and you're going to drain the oil in the front tires, the front axle is going to lean to the right side of the tractor as you're sitting on it, and that's due to the ring and pinion gear, or the pinion gear is on the other side of the tractor. And so there's more weight on the right side than the left. But all of the oil will drain down to the right side of the tractor. And the only oil that's left in the left side of the tractor as you're sitting on it is just what's in the bottom of this gear tub. So we're going to go ahead and take this loose and drain this one. It shouldn't have very much oil in it. So we'll let that one drain out. I've already got the drain plugs back on the other side. Let this one drain out, and then we'll start the fill process. Alright, that's been draining for a while. It's barely dripping anything. Time to go ahead and put this back together. And then we'll start adding our oil. Alright, ready for oil. Alright, that's been draining for a while. It's barely dripping anything. Time to go ahead and put this back together. And then we'll start adding our oil. Alright, ready for oil. Alright, now we're going to add oil back to the front of our front axle. It calls for 2 quarts in the front axle. What I'll do is go ahead, and I've got exactly 2 quarts here. We'll go ahead and put in almost 2 full quarts. And the reason I say almost 2 full quarts, I'll wait till the wheels are back on and it's sitting level on the ground, and then I'll make sure that that there's not any leftover oil residue. Now, you don't want to overfill your axle with oil, because as it warms up, that oil will expand, and it can cause you to blow seals and push seals out and push oil out around gaskets and seals. So don't ever overfill anything. I had a good friend that had a small subcontract tractor, and he kept complaining about it smoking real bad when this thing's just constantly smoking. He said, I gets on level ground and it quits smoking, and he goes up the hill and it starts smoking. Or if it goes down the hill, it starts smoking really, really bad. And I went over and checked the tractor out, and it was probably about a quart over oil. Now the thing only carries his little tractor only carried 3 3/4 quarts of oil, and it was a full quart over. We got a tube and sucked it out, and that cured that problem. But it was burning oil because it was sucking it up through the back into the engine through the breather system. So once we figured that out, it was an easy fix. But that could have been a lot worse too. You can actually break rods, and when the rod comes around, if you ever slap your hand on a swimming pool with your bare hand, and you bare hand the swimming pool, it hurts really bad because water it becomes solid, and it can't move out of the way it's fast. Well, the oil's the same way. So as your connecting rods come down, if the oil is too high in the engine, the connecting rod to come down, and it's hammering that oil, which is basically like a solid at that moment, and it can actually break your crankcase or your crankshaft. All right, we've got our oil in it. We'll go ahead and button this dude back up, put the wheels back on, and then we'll measure it again, or check the level after we've got it leveled out on the ground. The next thing on the checklist is the 3-point hitch linkage. You know, just do it once over make sure there's no cracks, or make sure there's not bent anything. I know my 3-point hitch is in good shape, so I'm not really worried about that. All right, the next thing on the list is the hydrostatic pedal in the neutral position. Now you check this check this daily. It's something I'm going to check obviously on the 50 hour. And what you're looking for is when you come to a complete stop and you remove your feet from the pedals, the tractor should not move. It should not keep inching forward or inching backwards. So if it starts doing that, if it starts inching forward or inching backwards, then you need to make the adjustments necessary on these pedals. All right, the next thing on the list is adjustment of brake pedal play. Now what we're looking for on this brake pedal is to see how much play is in the brake pedal before it starts engaging. This thing says between 2.8 and 3.5 inches. Now if you want to really get technical, you can take a ruler and stick beside this thing and then see how far down you push it before it engages. I know I start feeling pressure at this point. And that's just that's right in that sweet spot. So my brakes work really well, and as they should at this early stage. But that's something you want to check on a regular basis. If you start noticing that the pedal's going down further to the floor before it does anything, then you need to adjust that out. I'm not going to bore you to death with the next few things. It's like turn signal lights, horns, instrument panel, indicator. Make sure your tachometer works, everything, your gauges work. The next one that's important to me is your bolts and nuts. That's just a random one. But it doesn't give you any particular things, but go around and look at your tractor. And things I really want you to hit, what I would call the hot spots, are like your mount for your bucket loader. Hit these bolts, make sure they're tight. Go through and look at all of your backhoe mounts, because those things right there take a tremendous amount of pressure. So, make sure that you're hitting these about every 100 hours. Even though it says about 250 hours, I found on my Massey Ferguson that about every 100 hours I'd have to, I'd go and check, and sure enough, these mount bolts would be a little bit loose. Now, I am really pleased with the LS and the fact that they've got so many bolts, and they're a little bit bigger. Check your tire pressure. On the next one on the list here is checking your tire pressure. The tractor, maintains its stability, especially on inclines, with the proper tire. If you got a tire that's too low, it could actually cause this tractor to turn over. So, it says daily check your air pressure. I think you can do, use your own judgment on that. And that's just something to keep an eye on. And like I said, those things, a spongy tire can cause the tractor to turn over. Now, toe in, that's number 23 on the list, and it says check it every 250 hours. Now, I'm going to tell you what to look for. You want to look at your front tires, and if they're wearing more on the inside, then your tires are toed out. If they're wearing more on the outside, then the tires are toed in too much. If they're wearing in the center and they're basically flat all the way across, then your toe in is correct. That's the easy way of looking at it. So as you're using your mower, and you start noticing as long as the tire's wearing flat across the board, you're fine. If it's one way or the other, your toe in is you're either toed in or toed out. All right, this is the hydraulic hose. The number 24 on the list is the hydraulic hose. It says check all your hoses at 50 hours. Now this is the one hose on the tractor that everybody won't have. This is just if you have the backhoe. And there's honestly very few hydraulic hoses on this tractor, other than if you are looking at the backhoe and the loader. And those two things are each tractor don't have. I think this is kind of in that way this is a generic list. So this tractor really doesn't have they don't really have any hydraulic hoses too much, other than maybe around the power steering, and that will be the only ones. So just take a look at all your hydraulic hoses and check for cracks and leaks and go from there. Thing on the list is crankcase breather, and this is not, this is on the engine, and it's not required to be checked until 1,500 hours. So we're not going to worry about that now. This is a 50-hour service. I finished putting the wheels back on. I got it all buttoned up, and I cranked the tractor up, backed it out, let it idle for a little bit, and checked everything out. And then I put it in high range, and I went down the road as fast as it would go, full throttle. And one thing that was very surprising to me, I was not expecting this, is that the transmission is really quieting down quite a bit. I don't know if me putting the Lucas in or just having new transmission fluid in it, but it was very smooth, and it just seems a lot more responsive at the pedal, and on top of that, it's just considerably quieter. Alright, I got one more thing I want to show you, a grease point on the tractor. There's very few grease points on the tractor, but if you have the mower deck, the mid-mount mower, there's a grease point on two sides, just identical opposite sides. If you have the bracket, there should be a hole right here. I don't know if you can see the hole. Let me see if I can get in here. There's a hole right there, and there's a grease fitting in there that you have to grease. That's the control arm, or the lift arm for the mower deck. There's one on the other side identical to this.